Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, I'm going to react to the most difficult prisons in the world. Now, this is going to be a fun video for me to watch. I've got a bit of a kind of like a morbid fascination with prison because obviously I've never been to prison. I don't know anyone that's been in prison. All I know about prison is what I consume in media, like so in documentaries and movies. And I've always wondered, like, what are the most difficult, the most hardcore prisons out there? Like about a year ago, I reacted to one in America called Red Onion, and that one looked horrible. I think everybody in there is in solitary for like 23 hours a day. It's like the worst of the worst. So that one's probably got to be the worst one in America. But I've wondered, you know, in Eastern Europe, there's probably quite harsh ones too. Maybe in South America. To be honest, everywhere around the world, there's going to be some real hardcore prisons for, you know, the worst of the worst. So yeah, this video is going to be really interesting to watch. Let's do it.
Number 9. Black Dolphin. Near the border with Kazakhstan is one of Russia's oldest and toughest prisons. It's been in use since at least 1745, when it was operated as a hard labor camp. Its current common name is Black Dolphin, derived from a sculpture made by inmates which is found at the front entrance. This notoriously strict prison is the final destination for many prisoners serving life sentences. It houses hundreds of the country's most dangerous murderers, molesters, terrorists, and cannibals. Arriving inmates are blindfolded to prevent them from identifying escape routes. They are then locked behind a set of 3 steel doors and are only let out of their cells for an hour and a half every day. During this time, they exercise in a large cage while their cells are inspected. The inmates spend the rest of the day in isolation, with guards checking up on them every 15 minutes. There's reportedly one strict rule according to which they aren't allowed to rest or sit on their bunks from the time they wake until bedtime, roughly 16 hours. Every command made by their supervising officers must be answered with, "Yes, sir." Whenever the inmates are transported through the prison, they are handcuffed behind the back and held in a stress position, meant to give the guards full control while limiting the inmates' view of their surroundings.
Good Lord.
Number 8.
Man, that was just frightening. So they're not allowed to sit on their bunks until they go to bed. For me, it's just the isolation for that long. Oh.
USP Florence AdMax. USP Florence is the only Supermax prison in the United States, and it's designed to hold inmates deemed most capable of extreme violence. They include high-profile terrorists, gang lords, and serial killers. They're held in single cells for 23 hours per day and supervised round the clock. The perimeter of USP Florence features pressure pads.
Even if you escape, where are you going to go? It's literally in the desert.
A multitude of motion detectors and cameras, in addition to a 12-foot tall razor wire fence. It has numerous remote control doors, and the entire facility can be locked down at the push of a button. The sinks, desks, stools, and beds in the cells are made almost entirely of poured concrete to prevent prisoners from harming themselves. The 4 inches by 4 feet windows are designed in such a way that inmates never know their exact location in the prison. After a few years of extreme confinement and strictly limited human contact, some may be transferred to a prison with fewer restrictions. According to recent reports, suicide attempts are relatively common at USP Florence, and they often succeed. In 2012, a number of inmates launched a federal class action against the prison, alleging chronic abuse and improper attention given to those suffering from severe mental illnesses. Number 7.
Scary. I mean, to get there, you've got to be really, like, you've got to have done something evil. But I mean, I guess these people are never getting out, are they? So maybe that's why they don't try and rehabilitate them.
La Tumba. La Tumba, which translates as the tomb, is an underground detention facility in Caracas, Venezuela. It's part of the tower which serves as the headquarters for the Bolivarian Intelligence Service. Prisoners are kept in small cells and under constant bright lights, which cause them to lose their sense of time. There are no windows, and the only sound that they hear is that of the Caracas metro trains nearby. The inmates have no possibility of interaction because each cell is aligned next to one another. Security protocols require any visitors to undergo strip searches performed by multiple secret intelligence personnel. Due to the inhumane living conditions, political prisoners held in La Tumba for extended periods of time tend to become very ill. Even so, they are reportedly often denied medical treatment.
Wow.
Number 6.
Just left there to die pretty much. Whew.
6. Bang Kwang Prison. Ironically known as the Bangkok Hilton, the Bang Kwang prison in Thailand's capital city is known worldwide for having a brutal regime. It was built for 3,500 inmates, but houses over 8,000.
Oh my
most
goodness.
of whom are serving at least 25 years. New prisoners for 3 months must always wear shackles. The inmates on death row also have shackles welded to their legs. Only one meal is served per day, usually consisting of a bowl of rice and soup. Most prisoners are not only malnourished, but they also contract diseases, resulting from faulty running water and sewage systems. These issues are only made worse by the severe overcrowding.
Yeah, I imagine something like, you know, COVID in there. It must have just completely gone rampant because everyone's just so close together.
Number 5. Rikers Island.
Rikers, I've heard of this
Rapper
place.
Lil Wayne, punk icon Sid Vicious and Mark David Chapman, the man who killed John Lennon, have all at some point gone through Rikers Island, New York City's largest and most famous jail, found between Queens and the Bronx. The massive facility handles an average of 10,000 inmates daily. Even though it generally holds low-grade offenders, Rikers Island has a notorious record of systematic abuse. According to the New York Times, in 2013 alone, over 129 inmates were severely injured by the guards. The list of injuries included brutal head wounds, deep cuts and broken bones. To make matters worse, the vast majority of those inmates had already been diagnosed with mental illnesses. Throughout the years at Rikers, there have also been reports of guards often sanctioning violence between inmates. Some guards would reportedly select inmates to act as enforcers on their behalf. It's this constant friction that has gradually led to an increase of violence at Rikers Island. Over 9,400 assaults were registered in 2015 alone. The prison's infamous reputation is why the New York City Council has recently voted to have it closed down by 2026.
But the thing is, unless you staff these prisons properly and, you know, there's enough checks and balances, this stuff is going to repeat itself at the new facility too. It must be really difficult to work in a prison unless, you know, there's a lot of you, a lot of corrections officers. How do you keep control over places like that?
Number 4. Piatkov Prison. Piatkov Prison in Poland is home to some of the most dangerous criminals in the country, but also to a number of those deemed too violent for other European incarceration facilities. Inmates from every wing are monitored 24 hours a day with sophisticated surveillance systems. Despite its imposing size, the feel of Piatkov Prison is often described as claustrophobic. It was constructed in such a manner that inmates are isolated and have minimal contact with each other. This is meant to prevent violent prison gang culture and the trafficking of amphetamines. Piatkov has an extreme isolation cell, conceptualized with the intent of breaking down even the most hardened criminals. It's a 6 by 3 feet room in which inmates are held with their hands and feet. 3
feet. That's like, oh my gosh. So you can't even lie down in a cell like that, can you?
Shackled. A sensory deprivation helmet is placed on their heads, which prevents them from seeing, hearing, and even speaking properly. This form of psychological torture is reportedly meant to subdue prisoners that have repeated violent outbreaks. Number 3. San Quentin.
God.
The San Quentin State Prison has what has been described as the largest death row in the Western Hemisphere. Throughout San Quentin's history, 215 prisoners were executed by hanging. 186 died in the gas chamber, and 11 were given the lethal injection. While in recent years, the state of California has temporarily suspended executions, San Quentin remains a brutal prison to be locked up in. Inmates exercising rows of independent cages. Even sessions of group therapy are often held with each prisoner segregated in a small cage. Prisoners deemed the worst of the worst are housed in a building called the Adjustment Center, the harshest of the death.
The Adjustment Center. That is such a eerie name. You know that it's going to be awful in there. I have to remind myself to try not to feel sorry for these people, because to end up in a place like this, you have to have done something heinous. But these conditions are awful. I mean, what do you guys think?
Death row units. Due to California's long appeal process, the inmates may spend years on end inside cells which are 6 by 9 feet. Smaller than the standard parking spot. There are no chairs or desks, nor are there proper sources of natural light or airflow. Human interaction is virtually inexistent, while the adjustment center is immersed in constant noise, thus causing sleep deprivation. It's due to this incredibly tough regime that it's been argued more people on death row at San Quentin have died from suicide rather than execution.
Whoa.
Today's topic was requested by Bobby Vernon. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Evin Prison. Evin Prison, located in the eponymous neighborhood of Tehran, Iran, has been criticized by human rights groups for severe abuses against its political prisoners.
Surely number 1's got to be Guantanamo Bay, right?
Evin has denied access to these groups for years and is believed to have covered up various atrocities such as rape, severe beatings, and other forms of horrendous torture. The prison has become known for its extensive use of white torture. While this doesn't involve physically assaulting the inmate, it wreaks havoc on their mind. Their cell is entirely white with no windows. Their clothes are also white, while the neon lights above them, which are always on, are positioned so that no shadows are shown. Prisoners aren't allowed to speak, their cell is soundproof, and the guards wear padded shoes to avoid making any noise.
Sensory deprivation, that is awful.
The surfaces are smooth, robbing inmates of variable tactile sensations.
And
the food they're served is also white, usually unseasoned rice. Some prisoners at Evin were reportedly held for years in such conditions. They'd gradually begin to lose their sense of self and suffer hallucinations or psychotic episodes.
This is
the first documented
awful,
report of white torture at Evin came in 2004 from writer Amir Abbas Fakhravar, who'd been in prison for making comments on Iranian authorities in his book. Writer Ebrahim Nabati.
Is that all he did? And they put him in there? Jeez, man.
Avi was also subjected to white torture and claimed that even after he left Evin, he couldn't sleep without pills and still felt the effects of the excruciating loneliness. Number 1. Sednaya Prison.
No Guantanamo.
Sednaya Prison, operated by the Syrian government near Damascus, has been reported as responsible for utterly horrific human rights abuses. It earned a reputation as the military prison where detainees were taken to die. Over 13,000 people are believed to have been the victims of summary execution at Sednaya, which also had a crematorium on its premises. Once taken there, some prisoners were forced to choose between dying themselves and killing a friend or relative.
What?
Sednaya is so inaccessible to the outside world that most of the information about its hellish regime comes from former inmates. They claim that upon arrival, the detainees were severely beaten as part of a welcome party. While blindfolded, they were savagely struck with cables, metal bars, or a whip made out of a tire cut into strips. It was called the tank belt because of the explosive sound it made when it struck human flesh. Torture was rampant and included keeping inmates in stress positions while they were beaten, electrocuted, or had cigarettes put out on their bodies. They were constantly deprived of food or water. Some were raped or forced at gunpoint to rape others. Prior to Sednaya, one detainee had spent time at a different prison, where the brutal conditions and shortages had forced him to become a cannibal. The man called that former prison heaven when compared to Sednaya. Thanks for watching. Would you rather spend a month in a Supermax prison?
That was awful, man. I mean, fascinating, truly fascinating, but some of the living conditions in that video, I mean, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Like, the ones that really stuck with me are obviously the Sednaya one, where the guy who was in a prison where they had to be cannibals to eat, then moved to Sednaya, called the old place heaven. And the place with the white torture room, the one where everything, like the furniture, the food was white. There was no, like, every sensory deprivation was used as well. That would wreak havoc on my brain, honestly. I couldn't last a week in there. I don't think I could do it. I mean, yeah, you know, a lot of the people, as I've mentioned, in these prisons probably deserve to be there. But honestly, some people, based on, you know, the last one, there was a guy who just wrote something in a book and he got put in there. I mean, geez, like, that's just completely unjustified if that's the true story. Crazy video. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.